Somebody must have switched it.
That's why I was like, why are we here?
All right, at 6:30, so I'm going to call the August 5th meeting of the Willmar City Council to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Ost,
Here.
Councilmember Nelson,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Schultes,
Here.
Baggerly,
Here.
Osmus,
Here.
Butterfield, O'Brien.
Here.
So I have Mayor Reese is excused. So I have 8 present, 2 absent, 7 present, 2 absent. Sorry, can't do my math today.
Thank you. 7 present, 2 6 present, no, 7 present, 2 absent. I can't do my math tonight either. All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Ost.
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
and O'Brien.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That passes. I have a proclamation for Ann Kofeld Day. Whereas Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid's longest-serving Deputy Director, Ann Kofeld, will close out a 44-year career serving lowest-income, vulnerable, and marginalized clients residing throughout Candiac County and 48 nearby counties. And whereas Ann Kofeld joined Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid August 9th, 1980, fresh out of law school and rapidly ascended to the rank of Deputy Director in 1983. And whereas Ann Kofeld helped clients obtain 21,231 nights of safe housing, directly impacted more than 15,012 people throughout her career, and garnered $473,737 of legal benefits on behalf of clients. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor, city council, city staff, and the citizens of Willmar hereby offer their sincere appreciation to Ann Kofeld as she retires Friday, August 9th, 2024. We'll now move into the consent items. Clerk Larson, will you present the consent agenda?
Mayor Pro Tem Ost and council members, tonight for your approval, I have the City Council meeting minutes of July 29th, 2024, the Municipal Utilities Commission meeting minutes of July 22nd, 2024, Planning Commission minutes of July 17th, 24, a draft, consideration to approve the 2-year lease and advertising agreement with Willmar Warhawks for facility and ice usage at the Willmar Civic Center, consideration to approve facility use agreements with Willmar Public Schools, consideration of the Glacial Ridge Curling Advertisement Agreement for Blue Lines Arena at the Willmar Civic Center, consideration to approve West Central Roofing contractor's contract to repair Civic Center roof, shop roof, consideration to approve the contract with West Central Roofing Contractors Incorporated for the installation of the Civic Center snow guards, accept and approve final payment for project number 2210, Trunk Highway 12 lift station, removal of inactive planning commission, zoning appeals board applicant Steve Amon, zoning appeals board applicant Jean Kling, accounts payable report from 7/24/2024 through 7/31/2024, and for your information, monthly permit report of July 2024.
Thank you. Any items that we're removing from the consent agenda? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved. Second.
Any further conversation? All right, roll call.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
and Mayor Pro Tem Osk.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
Consent agenda is approved. Our open forum tonight, we have 2 speakers. First, Mr. Butler.
Hello. You guys got a pamphlet that I dropped off. That's a picture of the basement of our building at 309 Benson Avenue 2 weeks ago. We first brought this to your attention in February. The city turned it over to insurance. Insurance denied. So we've contacted the city. Nothing's happened. They blamed it on utilities. Utilities came over there, fixed the pipe. They blamed it on our pipe. We replaced our pipe. This keeps happening. Mr. Osk brought it in front of the city council on the agenda. The mayor went off on a drainage issue from here to Grass Lake or whatever. This is pressure pushing through a concrete wall and a concrete floor. That's mud in the basement. This thick. It's not a drainage issue. This is pressure. Everything in the city that's done utility-wise, maintenance-wise, is approved or signed off by somebody. I know what the issue is. It's been temporarily, supposedly, fixed. It didn't fix it. They ran a freaking water pipe through a busted up sewer pipe that's been abandoned for how many years, dug it up, turned the pipe around, buried it back over, and asphalted it. They didn't fix anything. Plus, it's illegal. They're dumping stormwater through a sewer. I mean, and nobody's given me any attention to this. And it's been since February, where I've talked to Miss Valiant many times. I know 2 other people in the neighborhood who've brought videos, not pictures, videos to the city office building of water protruding through the road. Not in front of my building, in front of other ones. Neighbors have been asking for help for 20 years, guys. 20 years. This has been an ongoing issue, and now it's pushed through my wall and wrecked my building. And everybody keeps passing the buck. It's this person's fault. It's this person's fault. It has nothing to do with insurance. The city hires people to do the job. Hopefully their HR is better than their customer service, but somebody's proved them to do what they've done. And what they've done is wrong. And it needs to be fixed. I can't afford to fix this. My building's wrecked. This is 7 months. It's going to take an act of Congress to get this fixed before frost. So here I am going to be another year out. I mean, this isn't how you do business. If I ran my business like this, I'd be out of business. Mistakes happen. I get it. You just got to fix it. It's that simple. Something's wrong. It's got to be fixed. So I'm asking to please put some attention into this so we can get it fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Also speaking tonight, Mr. Riddler, Joe Riddler.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for letting me speak. I have a few questions on us moving forward on this fiber business. A couple questions I have is, how can the city take taxpayer dollar and start a business? I don't understand that. So now we're taking a government and we're going over against private sector business. Most government businesses fail. I'll repeat that, they fail. And you're asking for millions of dollars, not thousands, millions of dollars. And when it fails, it falls back on us, the taxpayer. So earlier this year, you guys said it only takes $9.4 million to put the cable in our city. The payback, I think at that time, was quoted 20 years. A 20-year bond is not $9.4 million. It's $16.6 million. So I think you're lying to the public. Don't shake your head, because we have to pay the full bill. And the thing about this is we're not guaranteed anything. We have a company that came into town, and it's kind of, to me, sounds like snake oil, because they come into town, they present this big project up here at the council, at this counter, and nobody is saying, no, you're spending money. When I was out getting signatures to save our park, this was the #2 issue with the residents in my neighborhood. Ward 2, your ward, your ward. And if you go and talk to these people, they're sick and tired of this extra spending. You guys are fighting a budget. You got a 2.5 deficit right now. You can't come up with it. But you're willing to keep throwing money at this maybe business. And to me, I don't see businesses not coming to Willmar. I see businesses coming to Willmar. And why we, the taxpayer, have to foot the bill for internet. There's companies out there. If they want it, they can pay for it. Fiber is out in the industrial park. I worked for a company for many years. When we moved out there, we put fiber in. If people want fiber, they can pay for it. We, the taxpayer, should not have to pay the bill for this. And if somebody wants to do gaming and different things like that, these kids, guess what, folks? Pay the bill. This is not right to put this on the taxpayer's burden. Please reconsider what we're doing. No town halls, no discussions. You're not explaining how you're going to spend millions of dollars. Please consider that. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmire. All right, next on our agenda is a public hearing establishing a gas franchise ordinance. And so I will call on Kyle Box to lead that conversation and open the public hearing at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. Good evening. Tonight, we've got two related actions revolving around gas franchise ordinances. The first action that you'll be looking at is to establish a new gas franchise ordinance, which is scheduled to replace the existing ordinance, largely due because the existing ordinance had a timeline on it. That 20 years has come and gone, and now we are in a position where we have worked with CenterPoint Energy to come up with an ordinance that is in front of you to approve. What a gas franchise ordinance is that it's a legal agreement between the municipality and the utility company that grants the company the exclusive right to provide gas service within a specified area, City of Willmar. This agreement typically includes provisions regarding service obligation, rates, infrastructure maintenance, and fees paid to the local government, which we'll get to next. Gas franchise often involve payment of franchise fees by the utility company to local government. These fees are typically based on a percentage or a flat rate of revenues derived from gas sales within the franchised area. By granting a franchise, the local government can regulate, oversee the operations of the gas utility within its jurisdiction. This includes ensuring compliance with safety standards, environmental regulations, and service quality requirements. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I will pause there if there are any further questions on the gas franchise ordinance.
Members of the public, this is a public hearing. Are there any questions or comments that you would like to make at this time? Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Then I will close the public hearing and bring that to the council table. Council members, questions, motions? Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So I had asked at the last meeting, this money is gonna be going to the general fund. It won't be designated for anything like our RAC 8 system has a designated fund.
Correct. Councilmember Fagerly, that'll be the next agenda item, but I can address it now. We are proposing it just be designated for general fund. However, the council can designate those funds how they wish. But we would be proposing to designate them to general fund to offset or go towards the general levy.
Councilmember Nelson?
Before we have a motion, if I understand correctly, this is replacing a franchise that was, you said 20 years old?
Correct. So
So we
this,
need to replace this whether we did the second motion or not.
correct. Yeah, that we, CenterPoint would need this agreement in place to continue to offer services in Willmar. The second agreement, the first agreement needs to happen regardless, whether or not the council wants to enter into a fee structure. That would be an additional action, but this would replace the existing ordinance in its entirety.
I can make a motion to approve the ordinance establishing a gas franchise. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further conversation on this topic? Roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Oss,
Aye.
and Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, I believe we need a motion to publish by summary. Is that correct?
I move to publish the ordinance by summary.
Roll call.
Councilmember Schultes,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Oss,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
and Davis.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, we'll now have a public hearing establishing a gas franchise fee ordinance. And I'll open that public hearing and again call on Kyle Box, our Director of Operations.
Thank you, Council. So as I was discussing, this is the second action related to gas franchises tonight. This is a ordinance establishing a gas franchise fee. Gas franchise fees provide municipalities with steady revenue streams that can be used to fund various public services and infrastructure projects without needing to increase property taxes. This financial support is essential for maintaining and enhancing municipal services such as road maintenance, emergency services, and public amenities. Fees ensure that gas companies contribute to the cost associated with their operations within the municipality. This contribution helps the balance with the financial burden of maintaining and developing municipal infrastructure. Furthermore, it should be clearly stated that CenterPoint customers in Willmar are likely to see an increase on their gas bill. Fees would be determined by the customer class, residential, commercial, industrial, etc., and applied to those who are not subject to property taxes, like nonprofits, churches, government buildings. So we've taken some time to look at the existing franchise fees that CenterPoint has with other cities. CenterPoint has franchise fee agreements, ordinances with 55 other cities across Minnesota, with populations ranging from 91,000 Bloomington to 1,365 Winnebago. It took some time to evaluate some of the rates from low to high. Again, in your packet, you can see what the city of Willmar is proposing. Specifically on residential, I want to take the opportunity to correct what I had said last time. I had misstated on the high end. The highest end that we're seeing for residential is $7, with the lowest being 50 cents. Now, take in mind too that when municipalities are setting these franchises, these are typically 20-year agreements, up to 25-year agreements, I believe. So that the high end was set in 2016, and then the low end was set in 2012 with a very small city. And they actually hit the low for every single category at 50 cents. So take that with some consideration. As we move into commercial A, the high number that we see across those 55 cities is $12. Commercial B, the high number is $40. Commercial C, $180. Small volume dual fuel A, $258. Small volume dual fuel B, $340.34, and large volume dual fuel, $991.62. And again, the low on all of those is 50 cents. Took it a step further and wanted to take an opportunity to look at more comparable cities strictly solely based on population. Out of those 9 cities, the populations range between 28,170 and 18,127. Across those, the highs for residential services, we see $6. Moving down the list, commercial A, $7.50, commercial B, $30, commercial C, $60, small volume A, $2.58, small volume B, $3.40, $34, large volume, $9.91, $62. With the lows averaging out to around $2.70 for residential. So really where Willmar's at on residential is again $5, commercial A was $10, commercial B for Willmar proposed $17, commercial C 45, 50, 60, 90, and so on. So I know that's a lot of numbers I'm throwing at you, but what I'm trying to illustrate is that the proposed rates that we're showing in front of you are within our comparisons that we did from information provided by Centerpoint. And again, this is public information to the Minnesota Public Utilities as well, to see where those who those cities are, where their populations, what their rates are. I will pause there. If there's any questions, if the public has any comments, but again, public hearing is to establish a gas franchise fee ordinance.
Anyone here from the public wishing to speak on this proposed ordinance? Yes. I believe our practice here is to list, is there a sheet up there for your name and your address as you come up to speak?
Yeah, your name. Joe Riddler, 1912 20th Avenue. Again, thanks for letting me speak. When you come up with a fee like this, I have great concerns. I've spoken up on all these apartment complexes that are being put in our city because people can't afford homes. How are those people, if you decide to set a fee over 50 cents, how are those people going to be charged? Because I don't believe they're being charged what they should be to be using our city streets and everything like that. I'm not seeing a breakdown. You talk about different volumes of usage. Again, if you could, please clarify on these apartments how they're going to be charged if you decide to put a fee, because it's not being set in place.
Thank you, Council. So the fee structure, the way the fee is set, it would be by meter. So however the meter is set up on the apartment complex, however they're paying, I don't have specifics. I mean, there could be different scenarios where every unit might be metered, or it's coming in as the building itself would be metered. When residential, when we talk about rate classes, there is a definition for how your rate class is identified. Residential is pretty straightforward. Those residential, as you move into commercial A, B, C, and down the line, it's determined on the number of therms you use per month. So a commercial A business would be anything less than 1,500 therms a month. Commercial B would be above 1,500 and under a certain amount, and then so on and so forth. So the way it's structured, the more energy you use, it could put you into a different class, the higher rate you would pay, if that clarifies the question.
So to understand that, so your volume, so is your volume equal or greater? I mean, or, for instance, Jenny O, we give them a break on water because you use a higher volume. So is the volume the same per whatever you want to call it, a gallon increment, whatever, but are they getting a break or not? You're talking about different volumes, but per gallon, per liter, whatever you're basing this on, is it, for example, $1 for dollar, or is it, if you could, please?
That's a great question. It's the way we have proposed it to be set up. It's set up to be a flat fee. Again, it provides us with more consistent budgeted revenues, what we can expect to come from each month, from each bill. There is another option that was presented to us from Centerpoint, is to set up on a percentage basis. What we have been told and what we have found, there's a little bit more subject to more influx. So if you've got a really cold year, you're using a lot of energy to heat your business, your home, that fee could go up. It might be more than $5 a month. Whereas you look at a winter like last winter, maybe your energy usage was a little bit lower, so it could be less than $5 a month, specifically talking about residential in this example. So we elected to move away from the percentage-based fees, again, for more just to have consistency. Went with it stuck with the flat fees. Hope that answers the question.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring things back to the council table. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the apartment complex or apartments, for example. So apartment has 36 units and they each have their own meters. Each meter will pay the $5 as a residential. If there is one meter and the owner pays it, or can he prorate it, or can they prorate it, or if the owner pays it, they then could use that as a reason to increase the rent, correct? But what I didn't understand is, would it be number of units versus commercial A, B, or C, or where would they fit into? Or would it be per residential unit?
I think there's a couple of questions in there. I'll try my best to answer those. Typically on some apartment complexes, you might see all utilities included, for example, so that you're not having those individual meters per apartment. Depending on the total overall usage of in this case, in this scenario, the apartment complex, that's the fee that would be set for that property. So if brings in within the rate class of the commercial C industry, it would be $45 a month flat, or whatever that classification would fall under. Whether it gets charged or distributed to the tenants of that building, I'm looking through here. I don't believe that was not a. I don't believe there's anything that would stop the landlord from passing that fee on. But whatever your lease agreement would say in this specific scenario on how those utilities are distributed.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So we have a couple of condo buildings in town.
Mm-hmm.
Heat is provided. They have one meter and it's a large meter.
Okay.
So there's maybe 16 or 18 units.
Okay.
So how is that going to be?
Similar to the example we just discussed, I would have to imagine that it would be the meter charge would come off of the 1 meter and be distributed,
Unit.
or whatever the total usage of the building would be. If it's not going to be strictly classified as a residential, if it's a commercial unit, condos, it might fall into another category.
In most apartment buildings, don't they have electric baseboard heat?
It could, yes.
They might have some water heaters that are gas.
Yeah, I don't have that specific data. With the information that was provided to us from Centerpoint was total number of customers from the end of 2022. There was roughly, I don't have the info, close to 7,000 residential units, maybe 300 plus commercial A, 300 plus commercial B, and that number dramatically reduces the lower are the higher volumes that we see here in Willmar.
Councilmember Schultes.
Thank you. And you may or may not have this, so it's proposed for $650,000, right? Is that the fee?
Rough, again, yes,
If to raise that 650, and Mr. Odens, this might be a better question for you, how much more than $5 per household would it be to raise $650,000 in the city? You know what I'm asking? If to get that $650,000, if we were going to raise taxes, how much would the taxes increase? Would it be more than $5 a month? More than $60 a year?
That's a good question. I don't want to misspeak without hard numbers, but
Right.
As Mr. Box alluded to earlier, this hits every meter instead of just the tax-paying meter or taxpayer, property taxpayers.
Right.
So I could get you a better number. I just don't want to do a quick off-the-cuff calculation.
to the overall general levy, that would be about 3.5%.
Yeah.
Is the 650,000. With our very rough numbers where we're looking
Right,
at right now.
right.
Again, not individual properties.
Other questions or comments? We still do not have a motion either. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You stated if we do this, there's a certain amount of time that we can't change it, or can we change it?
Yes, that's a great question, Councilmember. So specifically in the gas franchise fee ordinance, it is in here that it is on the last page, letter L, paragraph L, periodic review. The city council shall review this ordinance every 2 years in whatever manner the city administrator then determines to be appropriate, including but not limited to review by the city council in either a work session or a regular session. Failure to review this ordinance shall not in any way invalidate or limit it. So that is specifically called out on paragraph L. The overall master agreement, or I shouldn't call it the gas franchise agreement, would be good for 20 years. So this would be a supplement agreement to that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the gas franchise fee.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Further conversations. Councilmember Fagerly.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem. I mean, we've talked about this for years, and we never did anything because the municipal utilities had the hot water scheme. Sure. They removed that, I don't know, about 3-4 years ago, so more people are out of gas. It'd be more fair to have it now, but I would prefer to designate it for the streets. Just like we have the RAC 8, the TV.
Egg funds, yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it doesn't get lost. We would get it and we just throw it into the general fund. I can make that as an amendment.
Is there a second to that motion? Amending the original motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further conversation on the amendment to dedicate the franchise fees to street. Go ahead, Councilmember Nelson.
I'm concerned about that one. I think we're going to have a hard time balancing our budget this year. I think this was a way that you were looking at for us not to have to, hopefully not have to raise taxes. If we designate this towards the streets, we're going to be looking for other revenue to balance our budget, which we probably will anyway, but that's a significant amount. I think I will vote no on that because we haven't seen where we're at yet on our budget. I think that was one of the concerns that we had, that we were talking about this before that. I'd rather see us table this motion than to make a decision on how we're going to spend the money until we have a look at our budget.
Go ahead.
If I can add, Council, I appreciate that insight and input, Councilmember Nelson and Councilmember Fagerly. I do appreciate that as well. And I think there will be an opportunity for the council to make that decision on where these funds could live long-term. Right now, we're not necessarily recommending all funds to go towards street improvement projects, but as the council looks at the overall budget, has a better grasp on what 2025 looks like and maybe into 2026, that could then be the time to designate X amount of funds or however the council sees fit, specifically coming from gas franchise fees. Just my input.
Councilmember Schultz, or was it a follow-up or
No, it's a different.
Councilmember Schultz?
That maybe answered my question is, are we locked in? Can we change this from year to year where the money would go?
Anytime.
So if we need 6 or whatever it would be towards streets, we can do that, or if we need it, we can move it year to year.
It's completely up to the council to make that determination.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So again, just thinking, we can approve these amounts, but not approve where the money goes to, correct? Your recommendation is that it goes to the general budget, but that's not part of, is it part of what we're talking about?
Not
There was
specific.
an amendment to the motion.
No, but is it part of what you were recommending that it be used in the general budget? But that's not part of what our motion, what's establishing the fee, correct?
Correct.
Or is it?
No, there is not a designated fund in tonight's recommended action to where those funds would live. I was simply implying that we would, at this time, prefer them to go to general fund. However, it's going to be several months until we would start collecting those fees anyways. We would have, the council would have plenty of time to evaluate and make that decision at a later date, but simply approving the ordinance tonight would not lock the council in to where those funds would live permanently one way or the other. And that discretion is ultimately up to the council.
I just feel like since we haven't seen the budget yet, I think it would be foolish for us to try to control where this is going to go until we have an opportunity to figure out what we're dealing with this next year.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. When does this start?
Great question. In the ordinance, paragraph C, franchise fee is here, if passed by the council, is hereby imposed on the company commencing October 1st, 2024, the billing month. That was when it would start, but this is also subject to a 90-day review from Minnesota Public Utilities.
So it doesn't matter for this year's budget.
Not for 24, no. Well, I should back up. We could start seeing collection late 2024. But again, between now, August 5th, and December, first meeting in December, when the council will be setting its budget, there will be opportunity for you to look at the overall budget for 2025 and make that final determination on where those funds would live.
Councilmember Osmond.
Okay, so first we have to vote on the amendment?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other conversation on the amendment? Then I will call for the roll, and this is voting on the amendment to the motion dedicating the gas franchise fee for streets.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
No.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Os.
No.
Nelson.
No.
Davis.
No.
And Schultz.
No.
All right.
5 noes, 2 ayes.
Amendment fails, and we're back to the original motion establishing a gas franchise fee ordinance. Further conversation? All right, I'll call for the roll on the motion to approve the gas franchise fee ordinance.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Osk,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
and Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
Looking for a motion approving publication by summary.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Bryan.
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
and Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you, Council.
Next on our agenda, moving into regular business, we have a presentation from Bradley Peterson, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Again, my name is Bradley Peterson. I'm with the firm of Flaherty and Hood, here to give an update from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. Just by way of reminder, as you know, the CGMC represents more than 100 cities working together across Greater Minnesota outside of the 7-county metro area on issues related to local government aid and property taxes, economic development, energy and environment, transportation, annexation and land use, and labor and employment. And we try to get out and visit as many of our cities as we can in the interim and talk a little bit about the legislative session past, give you an opportunity to ask questions and raise issues pertinent to the city, and then talk a little bit about what we see in the future. So I'm going to very much just kind of hit the highlights here of this last session. It was very hectic and very jam-packed full of stuff. And if there is stuff that you want to ask about, please feel free if I don't touch on it. So going into the 2024 legislative session, there was a modest November forecast that showed a modest surplus, but that would mean very little cash spending this last year, although they did have some. Another dynamic that folks were looking at as they went into the session was essentially kind of a hangover from 2023. And I was reminded by Councilmember Nelson when I got here that when I was here last year, we were talking about the SRO issue, and Representative Baker was here, and the chief spoke. And so there was a lot just from last year that got put out there that either needed to be fixed during the 24 session or needed additional work or didn't get done last year. So things like there was a fix to the tax bill that had to happen, the SRO piece, updates to the cannabis law, and then the Uber Lyft situation, which I'll talk about a little bit here later as it relates to the bonding bill and why that didn't happen. And so coming into the session, CGMC has had a fairly short list of priorities. It was a bonding bill, EMS, and pump the brakes on new policies and mandates. Cities got a lot put on them during the 2023 session. There was a lot being worked through. State agencies had a lot to work through, and so didn't necessarily need a lot of new policies or mandates. On the EMS side, we were asking for $120 million for one-time aid for struggling rural ambulance service providers. And then the bonding bill was just kind of our typical asks related to things related to the Public Facilities Authority, Business Development Public Infrastructure Grant Program, obviously local infrastructure projects that folks are advocating for across the state, and then more work on the lead line inventory and replacement, which we started last year. I'm going to talk a little bit about EMS, but I'm going to do so fairly quickly since you don't operate or run your own EMS system. But I do want to talk a little bit about why we got so involved in the issue. You can see on the left side there, this was data collected from the Emergency Medical Services Regulatory Board, the EMSRB. And if you add up, at least for those who responded, about 93% of folks who provide service, if you add up all the operational expenses, the reported annual capital expenses, the subsidy that's essentially being paid, provided by volunteer labor, what you saw was about $122 million deficit for 2022, largely due because reimbursements for Medicare and Medicaid and private insurance do not cover the cost of these services. And the reason CGMC got involved was because about 33 of our members, in one way or another, either own or run or are part of a joint powers group that provides ambulance services. And across the state, as you can see in the right-hand pie chart there, about 55% of the ambulance licenses in the state are owned by local governments. And so whether or not you operate or own one yourself, you're certainly covered by somebody who does. In your case, it's Centricare. And so we introduced legislation to create this aid program, kind of a one-time Band-Aid, really, to create space for additional conversation about how do we beef up these services and make sure that they can operate. Because, of course, in addition to the financial stress, they've got workforce issues, they've got equipment. In some cases, you've got an ambulance service that's covering 600-700 square miles of territory. And so throughout the state, it really was a pretty dire situation. Fast forward to the end, after a lot of toing and froing and the typical legislative stuff, we were successful in getting $24 million for payments directly to providers in rural Minnesota. And that actually includes Centricare for their portion that they provide service to Willmar. They got a little bit of money in recognition of that to use on EMS related activities. And then there was $6 million put together for a pilot program in 3 counties that they'll collect data on in terms of other, call it models for service. So still below what we were asking for, but we went from 0 and this issue not being on anybody's radar to having a pretty robust discussion at the legislature, getting $24 million for the struggling services, and setting the stage for next year, because I do think that there will be quite a bit of additional discussion about long-term solutions, other funding mechanisms, that kind of thing. And I think the CGMC right now is really trying to determine how we continue to stay involved. We'll be involved at some level, but what level and what that looks like is an ongoing discussion with our board and our membership. Bonding bill was kind of the other big thing that the legislature was supposed to accomplish this last session. It was a traditional year for a bonding bill. Of course, they did a very large capital investment package last year, but that's because they had missed a year before. So this would have kind of gotten them back on their traditional schedule. It does remain in our trifecta scenario of government here, really one of the few meaningful places where the minority party, the Republicans, can have some influence in the process. The state had a debt capacity of almost $1 billion for general obligation bonds after the February forecast. The governor came out with his proposal in January, which he has to do by law, and had just over $800 million in general obligation spending, about $170 million from other sources that included cash and some other bonding tools. It was heavily focused on state assets, with very little left over for local projects. I think with the idea that the legislature would sort of put their stamp on that piece of it. Our asks, what we were advocating for, again, kind of the typical things, about $300 million for the Public Facilities Authority for water and wastewater projects, lead line replacement, about $180 million. This new child care facilities grant program that was created by the legislature last year. We're looking to get some more money into that. A new housing infrastructure, public infrastructure program that helps pay for the public infrastructure related to housing development. And then the BDPI program, which is used for expanding or bringing new business to town. And then we were looking at some policy related to some of the caps related to the Point Source Implementation Grant Program and the Water Infrastructure Fund. Those caps should be increased from time to time. Obviously, inflation is making these projects cost more and more and more, and so this would
increase the amount of state help that could be put to a lot of these projects. But of course, we know that didn't happen. And so why did the bonding bill fail? Well, there's, I think, a whole multiplicity of reasons. Starting with the arrest of Senator Mitchell from Woodbury on charges of burglary. That really kind of threw the legislature into a spin at the beginning of April, and it kind of gummed up the works in the Senate because, of course, the Senate has a 34-member DFL majority compared to a 33-member GOP minority. And so one seat, one vote obviously makes a whole bunch of difference in terms of what can be accomplished. And so, as you would expect, you had the GOP looking for ways to negate her vote because of her legal situation, and the Democrats arguing that there's a legal process that needs to go forward. And that's what they ended up doing was just kind of plowed through and stuck with their 34, 33 majority and took the votes that they felt like they needed to. But it really did kind of gum up the works in terms of the atmosphere in the state Senate. It was actually pretty remarkable to watch. For about a week, that was kind of all anybody talked about. And then for the rest of the session, that was maybe a third of what everybody talked about in the Senate. So it's still a part of the discussion. Quirks of the legislative calendar in April, the legislature was actually on break for quite a bit. They were on break for a couple of days around Easter. They were on break for a couple of days around Passover, and they were on break for a couple of days around the Muslim holiday of Eid. So they didn't work a full week during April. As it was. Again, last year's bonding bill, they did a lot last year. I think it took the pressure off of them to do something this year. If they didn't quite get around to it, they could point to the record-setting bill that they did last year and say, well, we did a bunch last year. And then other priorities at the end of session sort of took precedence. There was discussion about adding an equal rights amendment to the Minnesota State Constitution, discussions around gun control legislation, and then this Uber Lyft issue that was in the wake of actions by Minneapolis that was going to potentially cause these companies to pull out of Minnesota entirely. That would have been, I think, a very disruptive thing for the state's economy, tourism, et cetera. And so they spent a lot of time the last weekend of session on that issue. And so all of those things taken together kind of took the oxygen out of the room for passage of any kind of bonding bill. I want to talk a little bit about housing and zoning. This is something that we spent more time on than I would have anticipated, and involved a lot of policy discussion. So last year, the legislature put over $1 billion into housing. This year, they came with a number of policy items that would have basically attempted to create more housing by increasing density, address climate change issues through land use, and then address historical race-based zoning practices that were discriminatory in many parts of the metro especially. So the bills themselves were a little bit of a moving target, but the basis basically was that the cities would have been required to allow or accept upzoning on land zoned for single family. So let's say you had a single family area, somebody who owned property there decided I wanted to put up a fourplex, knock down the existing structure, put up a fourplex, put in 2 driveways. There would have been really nothing that you as a city council would have had any input into that. The neighbors would not have had any input into that. And it would have been just something that you would have had to accept, regardless of whether or not the infrastructure was there to support it, whether it was made sense from a safety and health perspective. And so we worked very closely with the other municipal groups, the League of Minnesota Cities, the Metro Cities organization, to push back on these ideas, with the idea that if they are good ideas, these are things that cities can already do if you want, and that there are local contexts that need to be taken into consideration, and that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really cut it. So we basically kind of wrestled those sets of proposals to a draw. I think that we will see those bills or some version of those bills come back. My hope is that on the front end of the discussion, there can be more engagement with the local government groups than there was last session. Last session, a whole bunch of these advocacy groups and their allied legislators got together, created these bills, and basically said, it's the city's fault. It's the cities are the reason that we don't have more housing. And that was a very adversarial take on things. And so our hope is that to the extent that we can all work together to solve our housing problems, there can be more collaboration at the legislature. And so I think that that is something that we will be seeing. Just want to touch on a couple of other things here as I round out that we did spend some time on and that I know cities are interested in. One, local sales tax authority, as you know, the House and the Senate in the 2023 tax bill put a moratorium on passage of new local sales taxes, said, nope, you can't come to the legislature at all to even discuss them. In the meantime, established a working group through the Department of Revenue. That group met and came up with some recommendations for the legislature that would have allowed cities in certain cases to pass a local sales tax for certain items without going to the legislature. First, ask permission that you would come up with. Here's what we want to do. We go to the voters for a referendum, and that would have been it for certain types of projects and under other certain conditions. Now, the House and the Senate bills were very different, and so they were unable to come together on any kind of agreement on what that should look like. And so nothing was passed this last year related to local sales taxes, and that moratorium goes until after the session closes this year. So I anticipate, I know there will be more discussion about that issue this year. The tax chairs have already been convening groups of local government advocates to discuss these. We've been participating in them, so hopefully we can get something done there. TIF and prevailing wage, there was a proposal that would have required prevailing wage requirements to be attached to any TIF project that a city did related to housing. This language was dropped in conference committee, but I think the topic will likely come back for more discussion. And we've actually been in conversation with the construction unions about this because there's been a lot of concern on the part of our members in terms of increasing the cost of housing. The last one I want to touch on is the bonding bill replacement fund. This language would have required local governments, anytime you got money from the state for anything, especially through the bonding bill, to at the same time create a replacement fund for the amount that you got from the state in terms of a grant, which of course is a little bit contradictory because cities are going to the state asking for money because they don't have the money in the first place. And so because there was no bonding bill, this piece again did not pass, but again, I think could resurface in the future depending on the makeup of the legislature here going forward. Looking ahead, we've got an election, as everyone knows. Every House seat is up for re-election, all 134 members. There's lots of members retiring. I think it's about 23 House members are retiring. There's going to be at least one special session in the Senate, which will determine control of the Senate. That's for a seat out in western Hennepin County for a woman who is vacating her Senate seat to run for the 3rd Congressional District. We've of course got President, U.S. House, Klobuchar seat. And then the legislature convenes again after all that here January 14th, 2025. So leading into that, and one of the things I'm spending a lot of my time here on the next couple of weeks is we do a candidate packet for legislative candidates. Once we find out after the primary who's going to be on the November ballot, they'll each get a packet that goes through all of our issues. LGA, why is it important? Why do we need to keep funding it? What are the unique challenges related to childcare in Greater Minnesota? Why is the housing challenge in Greater Minnesota different than it is in the metro? Also, the transportation projects or programs work, things like that. That is just a base level of information to really establish us as go-to knowledgeable folks and to give them a little bit of a head start as they get into the legislature. Finally, upcoming events, we've got our fall conference coming up in November. That's where we'll debrief the election and then really dig into our legislative policies for the next session. We've got our Legislative Action Day, February 12th, so about a month after session starts down in St. Paul, where we'll do some lobbying and advocating. And then we've got our summer conference here in July up in Bemidji. this next year. So lots going on. I think, next year, no matter what happens at the legislature with the elections, there will be a lot of activities. It'll be a budget year. So obviously we'll be doing a lot of work around local government aid and some of the funding programs that our cities rely on, and hopefully re-engage on this discussion about a bonding bill, which they definitely need to do. That, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Well, I've got a loaded question for you.
Great.
What's happened to our system? I can remember years ago, we would go up and sit down and they would work together, whether they're Democrat or Republican, which one was best for the people. It's an ego trip. That's what it is. And it's so disgusting. I watched what you were talking about. I couldn't believe what was going on. I mean, you were there, but I mean, I watched it. I just absolutely just shook my head and go, I can't believe that this system is ours.
Yeah, well, in terms of what's happened, I mean, there's any number of theories. I think there's some, you can look at just kind of what's happened nationally, and that has kind of filtered down. I think what it does is it reinforces the importance of the work of groups like CGMC to stay in front of them, to keep pestering them, to keep bringing them ideas, because once you're there on the inside, what you find out is there are people willing to engage and think through problems, roll up their sleeves, but getting to that point and getting to where you're getting then those solutions actually enacted into law, it's harder than, I mean, it should be hard, right? I mean, we're talking about, in many cases, millions of dollars and all sorts of things, but it's gotten much more contentious and much more difficult in my 17 years or so of doing this.
In your 17 years, I can tell you, I got a little further back than you.
Yeah.
I used to do some things at the legislation, and it was not that way. We'd sit down and discuss things, and it was a different situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think just, conference committees, they used to have real conference committees where the House and the Senate would sit across the table from each other and exchange ideas, exchange offers, talk about what was different about their approaches on things, and then come up with a solution. Now it's all done in a back room for the most part.
Yeah. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Can you speak a little bit about just, EMS? I know that it's not something that we operate as a city, but I mean, it seems like a real concern. And I mean, you asked for 120 million, you said you got 20.
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
Yeah, well, I think that, so it is an issue. And if you sit through a presentation with the executive director of the EMSRB, they've got just scary statistics in terms of the number of people who are exiting the profession, the number of people who are not renewing their license to be an EMT, because it's not well compensated. It's disruptive to those volunteers' lives, right? The beeper goes off and whatever they're doing, they're out the door. And then you also have situations like I mentioned where you've got, City of Virginia is kind of the example that I use, where they operate the ambulance service in a service territory of almost 700 square miles. But to the extent that there is a shortfall, it falls on the City of Virginia. The other folks in the counties that they are working in, or the townships, or the other cities that they cover, are not necessarily compelled to contribute when there's a shortfall. And so it's not really a sustainable system in that way. And so, there have been situations where there have been small towns that have wanted to give away their license and get out of the EMS business, and they found no takers. So they're compelled to continue to provide the service, which they want to have the service. It's a source of pride for a lot of communities, but it's also a great burden. And so I think next year, as we look at some of these things, I think it really does come down to there needs to be some kind of dedicated revenue source for EMS. And still kicking around what that might look like. But you're right, 24 million compared to the 120 million is, not, doesn't go a long ways, but it's more than anybody was getting 2 years ago, that's for sure.
Thank you. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. But I was just going to comment on EMS also. Eric Simonson has done a wonderful job, I think, with the coalition and his knowledge. But we had that gentleman that spoke at the summer conference 2 weeks, last week, or whenever it was. I know that restructure was going on and that has he been appointed or when will that take place? And his knowledge was amazing and it was very, he did a very good job of explaining and talking with that. And so I was just curious if he's still at the table with that.
So Councilmember Nelson is referencing a fellow by the name of Dylan Ferguson, who's the current director of the EMSRB. The statute or the law that included the money that is going out as emergency aid also had some changes to the regulatory board, essentially making it more of a state agency than an independent board. And so they have to appoint a director. They have not yet. I like Dylan. I think he's done a tremendous job in the very short time that he's been in Minnesota. He came to us from Pennsylvania after a very negative report from the Office of Legislative Auditor on the previous EMSRB head and kind of how that office operated under him. So yeah, Mr. Ferguson's a great asset to the state, and hopefully he'll be one of the people considered.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Do appreciate all the work you do for us and many cities in St. Paul and for making the trip out to Willmar and giving us an update. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much and good luck with the rest of your meeting.
You want to stick around?
Well, I've got the agenda.
Next on that agenda, we're moving into a master agreement for professional services on our municipal airport. Eric, our airport manager.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Thank you for giving me a minute here. This is coming back again. We talked a month or so ago after the selection process. This is the actual master agreement. Pretty standard boilerplate items there, kind of governed by the FAA for our federal projects. Keep in mind that these, the compensation or the total of this package will really depend upon how many projects we successfully are able to get funded by both the FAA and the state of Minnesota. So I don't have exact dollar amounts there, but it's the general agreement. These engineering costs are built into the projects as we do them, and so they're subject to, depending on the project, 90% federal, 10% local, sometimes 90 federal, 5 state, and 5% local, just again, depending upon the projects. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Councilmember Shoulders.
Eric, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, when we took that tour of the airport, that was an eye opener for me. It really was. And I would encourage every one of us to go out there and see why so much of this stuff needs to be done. So I know that Mr. Rudnigan would be very happy to take any or all of us around again and show us what's going on out there. But these are things that really, there are necessities out there. And as the city grows and the airport becomes more busy, it's just going to get worse. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz, and that is an open invitation. I've got a Suburban. We loaded it up with people, and I haven't cleaned all the grass off the bottom of it from the last one, but happy to take you around. And I'm always a game for an audience that can't leave. You know, when we get way out onto the acreage of the airport, you're kind of stuck with me till we get back. So I did appreciate that opportunity to take the airport commission around the airport and just show some of the things. Keep in mind, we're coming up on 20 years. 2006 is when that airport opened up, and so it's like a lot of things that go through our lives. We keep referring to it as the new airport, but it's not so much the new airport anymore. It's just the airport. So we are need to keep working on these projects. So, yep.
Is there a motion that someone would like to offer?
I'll make a motion to approve the master agreement for professional services for the Willmar Municipal Airport.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further conversation. Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Oz,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
and Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jared, our city engineer, cooperative construction agreement.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Enclosed in your packets this evening is the cooperative construction agreement between the City of Willmar and Candioi County for the Willmar Avenue improvements, which are currently under construction. The agreement outlines the costs associated with the city participation, which consists primarily of concrete items and catch basin casting replacements, as well as a new loop detector that was installed at the intersection with Lakeland Drive. The estimated cost of the agreement, and that's based on the bid prices. The ultimate agreement cost will be determined based on the quantities installed as part of the project, but the estimate provided by the county is $162,897. Staff has reviewed the agreement and we recommend its adoption.
Council members, comments, motions, questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further conversation. Roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Oz,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
and Osmus.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you. Mr. Box, you're back with us for the fiber use agreement between Willmar and Hometown Fiber.
Thank you, Council. Give me one moment here to switch screens, please. Okay. All right, good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. First, I'd like to open this up by addressing some information that was being shared within our community today. Several members of the community, maybe you yourselves, received some targeted ads regarding this project. And while concerns about the financial implications of municipal broadband projects are valid, the assertion that building a city-owned internet network would waste millions and inflate property tax increases dramatically misrepresents and oversimplifies the issue and overlooks several important factors. I want to talk about really just a few different areas here. We look at the long-term economic benefits throughout this project. Investing in a municipal broadband network can yield significant long-term economic benefits that outweigh the initial cost. High-speed internet access can attract businesses, improve property values, and stimulate local growth. Over time, these benefits can generate substantial returns on the initial investment, potentially offsetting the upfront expenditure. 2, the improved service quality and competition. A municipal broadband network can provide residents with high-quality, reliable internet service that may not be available through private providers. By establishing a local network, the city can ensure better service standards and more competitive pricing, addressing gaps in the current market and enhancing the overall customer experience and satisfaction. We're also addressing the digital divide. Equitable access on a broadband, this broadband project often targets underserved areas where private providers have been reluctant to invest. By providing high-speed internet to those areas, the city can help bridge the digital divide, ensuring that all residents have access to essential online resources and services. The potential for cost savings. While the initial investment may seem substantial, a well-managed broadband network has the potential to reduce long-term costs for residents. By keeping the network under public ownership, the city can avoid profit-driven price increases and ensure that revenues are reinvested into maintaining and expanding the service rather than being siphoned off by private companies. Fiscal responsibility and planning. The City Council would be responsible for the thorough planning and fiscal oversight to mitigate risks associated with this project. This includes conducting comprehensive feasibility studies, securing necessary funding, and implementing effective project management practices. Such measures can help ensure that the investment is sound and that taxpayer money is used efficiently. Comparative examples. Numerous municipalities across the country have successfully implemented broadband networks, demonstrating that projects can be managed effectively and provide substantial benefits to local communities. These examples highlight that with proper planning, execution, municipal broadband can be a valuable asset rather than a financial burden. And lastly, this is to be a community project. Community support will be one of many important factors in how the City Council will move forward with this project. While concerns about the cost of a municipal broadband network are important, it is essential to consider the potential long-term benefits and the positive impact on service quality and economic development. I would like to now move into a project overview. Again, summarizing for the council and for those that are in the audience or watching. The Connect Willmar initiative is designed to help secure Willmar's internet future by enhancing its infrastructure. Willmar has long been known for its leadership in agriculture, technology, and industry. The city continues to build on this legacy with forward-thinking projects like Connect Willmar. Fast, reliable, and affordable internet service has become crucial for personal and professional growth. Recognizing this necessity, Willmar's officials, you, the City Council, and city staff have taken proactive steps to ensure the community has access to high-quality internet service it deserves, and that it is offered at reasonable prices. In today's world, fast, reliable, and affordable internet is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. It touches every part of our lives, from how we work, how we learn, how we connect, how we prosper. Without it, we risk being left behind and losing the legacy our community has built. In the fall of 2022, the city put out 3 requests for proposals. Received 3 requests for proposals. This was a public document that any company, any provider, any internet service company could have submitted. Again, we received 3. Each of the proposals varied and offered more than the initial ask of bringing fiber to the industrial park. The standout proposal to the broadband committee was from Hometown Fiber. Their proposal suggested not only bringing fiber to the industrial park, but to every resident and business in Willmar. This proposal was received when broadband projects were happening all throughout the county and struck a chord with members of the committee seeing the need for access to fiber in Willmar. The committee sought more data before bringing a vetted recommendation to the council. In 2022, the City Council approved a mapping project with Hometown Fiber to take inventory of each parcel in Willmar. This was shared with the council back in January, I believe, of this year. But again, this is late 2022 data. Some of this may have changed. In fact, we know some of this has changed, particularly the 2 red parcels that our city owned. Those have been remediated and now are receiving internet service through other means. As we look at the overall, a large majority of Willmar is covered in the yellow. This means, according to this map, is currently meeting the demands and is expected to maintain that demand for the next 3 to 5 years. The services that are being provided on those parcels colored in yellow are over coax cable. The green, there are 14 parcels on this map. That is services being provided through PON fiber. I know someone will correct me in the room if I'm wrong, but PON fiber is fiber brought to the corner and coax cable brought to the building. Does that sound about right?
PON is just split.
Split multiple times. Okay. And then the blue parcels you'll see on the map here our 23 parcels are receiving fiber internet and will continue to meet that demand for the foreseeable future, 20 to 30 plus years. A lot of those buildings are state, city, governmental institutions, as well as some big box stores on the south side of town, as well as some parcels in the industrial park. So as we move through the project evolution, the first half of 2023, the City Council approved and looked at several different agreements through the Broadband Committee's recommendation, approving Hometown Fiber, approving their proposal and assigning them, approving a professional services agreement as our broadband consultant and technical representative. Laura Lewis, who the council has met with, is representing LRB Public Financial Advisors. Gilmore Bell out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Now still entering into consulting services with CEO of Utopia, which is Utah's open access fiber network. So this team was assembled because how the project was evolving at this time, and with the idea of constructing an open access fiber network. So what is open access? An open access network is designed to allow multiple internet service providers, ISPs, to use the same physical network infrastructure, often owned by a neutral party, in this case, the City of Willmar. The physical network infrastructure ownership, the physical network infrastructure, which would be fiber optic cables, other equipment to run the network, is owned, again in this case, by the City of Willmar. The owner, the city, is not involved in providing internet services directly to end users. The open access model, the infrastructure owner offers access to this network in an open, non-discriminatory basis. This means that various ISPs or network operators can lease access to the network to provide services to customers. Service providers, different ISPs can connect to the open access network and offer their own services. They handle customer acquisition, billing, support, while the underlying network infrastructure remains the same. Competitive market. Because multiple ISPs can use the same network, there is greater competition in the market. This can lead to better service options, lower prices, and more innovation as different providers strive to attract and retain customers. And lastly, regulation of fair access. The open access model often involves regulatory oversight, which is what we'll be looking at next, to ensure that the access is provided fairly and equitably. The goal is to prevent monopolistic practices and to ensure that no single provider can dominate the network infrastructure. So in essence, the open access network separates the physical infrastructure from the services being provided, fostering competition, potentially improving choices and prices for consumers. Again, just more continued actions that have been happening, that will be happening, or that have happened. As community outreach, we have had the opportunity as a broadband committee to attend a handful of community outreach events, including Willmar Fest and Rockin' Robins. These events have been very well attended, very well received. From my point of view, I have not interacted with anybody at any of these events saying that this is a bad idea. It's always, I want to know more. I can't believe it's about time competition is brought to Willmar. We see the need for fiber infrastructure, and even talking with residents on how they can prosper and increase their work from home status or their business. Contract agreements, we'll get to that next. Network design, that was phase one network design was approved by the City Council last year, and that was that has been 99% completed by Hometown Fiber. Construction documents, the city will be looking at the following action item for a professional services agreement with Bolton and Mink for the civil engineering, and then financing, which we'll talk about next. Sorry, I've got two screens going on here. So I just want to do a high-level discussion on financing. We're not talking about financing any projects tonight. That is not tonight's ask. That will come at a later date. However, the city is looking at how the city would finance this project is through general obligation tax abatement bonds. The total project estimate at this time is $25 million, and we'll be doing this in phased approaches. I want to stress that, phased approaches. And what does that mean? The city has been divided into 3 sectors, if you will, each phase being done in a different construction cycle. This is our attempt to mitigate risk. If there's one section of the network or one section of the project that doesn't take off or it doesn't work, we're not going to be, for lack of a better term, on the hook for $25 million. I believe a $9 million number was referenced earlier at the open forum. The $9 million number was the estimate for phase 1 of this project. And then repayment of the bonds. The way that we have structured this agreement or structured this project is to not have to use, or in the last case scenario, to use taxpayer dollars to pay for this project. The way that we intend to pay for this project, to pay for the bonds, is to use revenue coming in from the subscribers, the end users that would sign up for this governmental program. That is the way that this project would be financed and how those bonds would be paid. Now, in the event that revenues fall short, absolutely, the city council is obligated to make those general obligation payments in other means, i.e. raising the levy. Okay, I will pause there and switch screens once again. First, I'll ask, are there any questions on what I discussed there? Otherwise, we'll move right into the operations agreement.
Council members, you have questions? You can take us into the operations.
Okay. Okay, City Council, tonight we're asking for a resolution authorizing the fiber use agreement between the City of Willmar and Hometown Fiber. The City of Willmar has drafted a fiber use agreement for the use and management of city-owned fiber infrastructure. This goes without saying that this is a complex agreement and it has warranted a thorough review from city staff, Hometown Fiber, our legal counsel, bond counsel, and municipal financial advisors. The goal of this agreement is to state that the City of Willmar desires to construct and maintain a fiber optic communications network to serve the residents and businesses of Willmar, and that the City of Willmar further desires a manager, Hometown Fiber, to operate the city network on its behalf. Let's get into it. So I'm going to start. If you would like to follow along, you're more than welcome to. So it is page 2 of the agreement. Within the recitals, again, reiterating what I just mentioned, the city now desires to cause to be constructed and maintained an open access advanced fiber optic communications network to serve the residents of the city through the undertaking of the improvements contemplated, and it desires further that the manager operate the city network on its behalf. Moving to page 3, the city will at all times own the city network in its entirety and provide the manager and the approved ISPs subject to an ISP provider agreement with access to and use of the city network only as necessary to operate and manage the city network for the benefit of the public on the city's behalf and as within this contract. The parties, this is key, and I think this will be a good talking point for later. The parties understand that they are entering into this contract for operations of the city network prior to the city's final determination regarding the feasibility of the construction of the city network, the city's determination regarding the funding of such city network and the actual construction of the city network, and have included provisions to account for these future uncertainties in this contract. Moving to page 4 under 1.8, the consultant agreement. This is a reference to a previous agreement that we had talked about, that we had entered into a consulting services agreement on October 2023, which addresses other services provided by the manager to the city related to the planning for engineering, the network architecture, and so on. Definition for on page 5 is the definition under 1.16, the governmental program. That is what this program is called, or will be how it's referred to in this document. Essentially means that the city's establishment of an open access high-speed fiber optic broadband infrastructure network for use by the residents and businesses primarily located in the city and its end users through end user contracts with ISPs, as supported by day-to-day operations, management, maintenance, and use of the city network by the manager for the benefit of the public. Quickly, more on definitions. Again, internet service providers means private companies with which end users may contract to receive internet access across services through the city. Let's see. Moving to page 7, 1.31, operational date. The definition means the date to be established by the agreement of the parties and will be the earlier of the date of the first user of the network is activated or no later than January 1st, 2029. Moving to page 9, starting with section 2.2, the term of this contract shall be effective for a period, shall be the agreed upon or commence upon the effective date of this agreement and continue for a period of 5 years, beginning on the operational date and ending on the expiration date. There is also renewal language in here that the contract may be renewed for up to 3 successive 5-year terms. That's at 2.3. Moving to 2.4, I think this is a good paragraph to read in its entirety, simply because I think it addresses some of the understandings that the city is entering into this agreement, but has opportunities to evaluate and make that final determination on the project at later dates. So notwithstanding any provisions to the contrary contained in this contract, the above initial term or any renewal term or extensions thereof shall be for a period terminating upon the date of A, either the expiration date, B, the manager's failure to carry out the governmental program through its management and operation of the city network for the benefit of the residents of the city pursuant to this contract, C, termination of the governmental program or change in the governmental program that no longer allows the city to own the city network and or operate the governmental program, or D, the city's sale of the city network to a third party as allowed by law. This is the important part. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary herein, the city may terminate this contract at any time prior to the operational date if it determines in its sole discretion that the city network or the financing thereof is not feasible, provided, however, that after providing written notice of its intent to terminate this contract terminate this contract to the city network or financing thereof, the city shall meet with the manager to negotiate the terms in order to explore whether they may mutually agree upon any amendments. And that process is greater described in section 14.14. So in summary, there is options for the city council if we determine that this project is not feasible, financially feasible to move forward with this contract. That language is built in there or with the governmental program. Obviously, this is thinking worst case scenario. We would obviously like to see this project move forward, but we need to make that determination to make sure it's feasible at that time and provide you, the council, with that information. Okay. So moving on to page 10, under 3.4, paragraph B, this is the city's reserved rights. At any time during the manager's use of the city network, the city may take any and all measures necessary or desirable for the operation, safety, and protection or preservation of the city network, including emergency repairs, alterations, additions, or improvements. The city may exercise any or all of the foregoing rights without being deemed guilty of disturbing the manager's use and without being liable in any manner to the manager or its agents, and without affecting the manager's obligations hereunder. So essentially, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to step in at any point where we feel the city absolutely needs to. Now, there are steps prior to or before that for if there's any disputes or opportunities to have conversations, which would be the preferred way to make sure things are getting resolved, but that protection, that right is in here. Moving on to page 12. Under operations and management, it'd be 4.1.3. This would be the establishment of a broadband commission. So at a future date, if the council continues to proceed with this project, city staff would work on bringing an ordinance to the city council to establish a broadband commission. The members, which would be appointed pursuant to the Willmar City Charter, but the Broadband Commission's full authority and duties would be set forth in ordinance and adopted by the City Council. Really, the Broadband Commission's goal is to be that first line of communication and oversight to this project and relay information to the City Council and to staff. Okay, page 13, 4.2.2, end user billing. This was an item that had gone back and forth from the beginning. We have finally ended up on that ISPs will be conducting the billing, not the city of Willmar. So how this reads is the manager shall provide guidance to the city as requested with regard to the initial establishment of and subsequent evaluation of amendments to the ISP fee percentage, a membership fee to be set forth in the city's fee schedule. The manager will oversee the collection of all fees from ISPs on behalf of the city, including all retail fees charged to end users, membership fees, ISP fees, and assist as required to ensure the city receives all payments the city is obligated to under this agreement. The city shall not bill end users of the city network directly. Okay. Page 14 would be 4.2.6, paragraph B, notice and approval of emergency repairs. There has to be, throughout the conversation with the broadband committee, Hometown Fiber, there has to be a path for emergency repairs. Typically, when a disaster happens where there's a big incident where lines get cut or trunk line gets cut, those costs are going to be fairly substantial. And if I recall correctly, I mean, just to mobilize, get a crew here to make that emergency repairs would cost the city no less than 20 to 25,000 minimum just to get the call out here. Is that about right, Kyle?
Well, that's on the higher end.
On the higher end. So what we wanted to try and show here is that there are different levels of repair. So anything between $1 and $10,000 there's immediate notice to the administrator or their designee, but allows Hometown Fiber to either contract or to consult with a contractor to make those emergency repairs. Repair estimates between over $10,000 to $50,000 needs to have notice to and written approval by the city administrator. And repair costs estimated to be greater than $50,000 should be noticed to the city administrator and approval by the city council. However, the city council shall be prepared to approve these requests retroactively, depending on the severity to what the repair could be. Again, these are in here as worst case scenarios, but they need to be addressed in here. I think one point to point out as well is that currently the city administrator has authorization to spend up to $25,000 per invoice. We would be asking for the authorization again to spend up to $50,000 with written approval by the city administrator. Obviously, these reports would come back to the broadband committee, the city council, but just because of quite frankly, the cost of doing any emergency repairs could exceed that $25,000 quickly. Okay, moving on to page 15, top of the page. It is paragraph E in that same section. This was a question that was brought up at a previous council meeting discussing field technician services. Field technician services will be provided by the manager during the term of this contract. Such services shall include minor repairs, dispatch, and resolution services. The manager will have at least one technician on site in the city between the hours of 7 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. on Monday to Friday to perform these services as requested under this contract. And then continuing on to page 16, 4.2.13 staffing. The manager shall employ sufficient persons of sufficient expertise, training, and qualifications necessary to carry out the governmental program safely, effectively, and efficiently, and manage, operate, and maintain the city network. Moving on to page 18 under Article 5, Financial Provisions, Section 5.4. The city's payment obligation. The city's payment obligations here under to the manager for technical representation, day-to-day operations, city network, connection services, other services shall be conditioned upon the following. The city's determination that the governmental program and construction of the city's network is feasible, that the manager has entered into agreements with at least one ISP to operate on the city network and will use all reasonable efforts to enter into an agreement with at least one additional ISP. At least 100 potential users have opted into participating in the governmental program on or before March 31st, 2025, and that the city is determining in its sole discretion on or about March 31st, 2025, that operating the city network and governmental program is feasible and financing the cost of the city network is feasible based on the final project cost estimated based on the final city network drawings and specifications, and that projected net revenues of the city network and the amount sufficient to cover debt service on any financing of the city to pay the cost of the city network. Moving on to Article 6, Defaults and Remedies. 6.4, this is on page 20. Dispute resolution and mediation. We spent a lot of time working on this paragraph, this language here, again, to provide assurances to the city and to also provide assurances to Hometown Fiber that there is a process if there is any disputes. We want to make sure that we can effectively communicate and work through any issues, but if we get to this point, we want to make sure that there is language in the contract that there is a fair, equitable, there is a process on how we handle disputes if it gets to that point, and that through mediation. Okay, almost done. Article 7, Governmental Program Management and Oversight. Page 21, 7.2, the initial report. The manager shall provide the city with an initial program evaluation report summarizing the manager's planned use of any of and activities with respect to the city network of the governmental program, including all projected revenues and expenses for each year of the term and such other information as may reasonably be requested by the city prior to the operational date. So this is our due diligence, again, making sure that we are projecting what we should be or what we need to make sure that this is a financially feasible project. Furthermore, moving on to page 22, 7.5, quarterly statement status reports. The manager shall deliver to the city on a quarterly basis during the term of the contract a report detailing the manager's use of and activities related to the city network of the governmental program, together with true and correct financial statements of the manager's financial condition and operations prepared according to generally accepted accounting principles for similar types of facilities for the preceding calendar year, and supporting documentation reasonably requested by the city. Again, this is not to be a burden to, in this case, Hometown Fiber, but it is to make sure that we are on track, that the program is operating the way it should be. Page 23, 7.9, Broadband Commission Oversight. The manager shall provide all the reports and budgets under this article, as well as reports detailing end-user complaints received by the manager to the Broadband Commission, who will provide the same to the City Council. The Broadband Commission shall have the authority to request additional records or other information as it deems necessary and related to the operation of the program, pursuant to the section we just talked, or up to 7.7, which is the audit, and 14.21 of this agreement. 14.21, page 32. Excuse me, 14.12, page 32. Interest by city officials. I figure I better make this clear. No elected or appointed official, officer, or employee of the city or the city shall, during his or her tenure of employment and for 1 year thereafter, have any interest, direct or indirect, in this contract or the proceedings thereof. We want to make sure that there is no conflict of interest for this agreement. And then lastly, I want to draw your attention to Exhibit E, which would be the very last page of the packet material for this agenda item, which is the manager compensation. So that's detailed there. The manager, as the technical representative of the city, will receive compensation for managing the day-to-day operations of the city network for the benefit of the public as set forth in this exhibit. The city will pay the manager a manager fee equal to $20,787 per month. In addition to the manager fee, the city shall pay the manager an end user fee each month. The end user fee shall be determined by the quantity of end users receiving internet services in the preceding month. The end user fee shall be calculated at a rate of $5 per end user receiving internet services. There's an example listed in there, and so on. So I think, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, I will pause there. I know I spoke a lot. I threw a lot at you, but this was a document that we have been working on for quite some time now. We've seen several different iterations of this document. We've had multiple lengthy conversations with advisors, with legal, with Hometown Fiber, to finally get to this point and provide you with a document to act on tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. I imagine that there will be some comments and questions for you. So, council members, where do you want to begin?
I just got one statement.
All right, Councilmember O'Brien.
Been on this committee for seems like a long time, and we had a lot of questions. I mean, a lot of questions that were asked of Director Box, and they came from all different directions. And when I looked through all of this information that we finally came up to, and it took a long time to get this contract done, almost everything that we asked is covered. And I think that's a huge plus because we had a lot of questions. I'm sure a lot of the questions you were thinking about right now, but most of the questions were about, what are we going to do? Are we sticking our neck out too far here? What is this? How can we make sure that we cover ourselves and cover our community? And we had question after question after question with our committee. And I looked through this, and he's covered just about everything that we asked.
Councilmember Fagerly.
So is there a village, a community, township, or a county that has their own fiber now in Minnesota?
Yes, not open access, but there are say close to 24 cities in the state of Minnesota that have municipal-owned fiber. Not providing it as open access, but different variations of this project, yes.
Are they profitable then?
We did not look into their profits, but their average take rates are between 40 and 50%, with some networks seeing 99% take rates.
Okay. Is there any late fees to ISP if they don't pay on time?
Sure. So that would be, and I'll also introduce David, our city attorney. He was instrumental in drafting this document. So, David, if you can find it faster than I can, I'll let you answer it too. But for late fees, that comes during the, let's see here.
Right. And sorry, Council, I can jump in for a minute there. We will have ISP agreements with the providers that will come after this is, once the project is moving forward, and we'll be done into those agreements. That will be covered a lot in the ISP agreements themselves in terms of cities' enforcement mechanisms for their payment.
So that's under section, page 15, 4.2.8, paragraph B. This is the extreme end of it, but ISP shutoff and continued services. In the event of a default by any ISP subject to the ISP agreement that was just referenced with the city, which the ISP fails to follow and notice fails to follow, the city may direct the manager to shut off that ISP's access to the city network and redirect ISP end users to another ISP to create as minimal an interruption to internet services as reasonably possible. So we do have control under ISPs that would be entered into. If we've got bad actors that are on this network, we would have the authority to take action and shut their service off and move those customers to another network.
Why would we have to move them? Why wouldn't the customers find their own?
Sure, they absolutely could, but if we that would have.
We don't have any other the internet stuff.
Correct. We would.
I heard of it happen over in McLeod.
Okay.
And Meeker County.
Okay.
They didn't pay.
Mm-hmm.
Their customers were shut off. They lost half of their customers.
Yeah. We would not be, the goal of this would not to be to disrupt customer end user service. That's why we've built this option in here to transfer them to another provider, or there's a bridge provider that we can get to while we make that decision. But the goal with this specific paragraph is to make sure that there is continued service for customers. And if we do have bad actors, bad companies that aren't following the rules, we have the authority to shut them down.
Do we know we would only need a technician between 7 a.m. and 3:30? That's the whole time. It's gonna fail.
It's a great question. There also is, there would also be a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week on-call technician as well. They may not be here in Willmar city limits during after hours, but there will be someone there to pick up the phone. And depending on what the emergency is or the issue is it something that can wait until the next business day, or is there an entire block out where we need to get a crew out there immediately to remedy the issue? And that would be the determination of the on-call technician at that time.
If someone needs to go for one to locate, who pays that fee then?
For the build of the project?
To locate an individual property owner.
So you're
Okay.
That's on us. That'd be on Hometown Fiber.
That's the short answer.
Okay, yes, within the project, yes.
And that's like $200, $250 a pop.
Well, it depends on who you contract with or whether we do it or sub it or, there's a lot of variables there.
Thanks.
Councilmember Nelson?
Thank you, Mayor Protem. I was expecting us, and I spoke with you about this too, about taking the next steps. Before we made a decision to make sure that we did get ISPs.
Mm-hmm.
If I heard you correctly, it sounded like you felt we could go forward if we just had one ISP. And I was thinking that we would want more than one ISP to make sure that this project could be successful. And when you look at the numbers and the costs and those types of things. So I'm just curious with what our expectations are with the number of ISPs and kind of that time frame of would we dare start with just one?
Sure. So what is again? It's paragraph page 19, 5.4, paragraph 3, page 19, paragraph 2. Excuse me. So the way this is written now is that there would have to be at least one ISP to operate in phase 1, and that we would continue to use all reasonable efforts to find at least one additional ISP for phase 1 as well. But when we look at the the overall number of customers located within phase one, which is approximately 22 to 2,300 parcels. We want to make sure that there's enough of a market to phase this in over time. So having extreme example, having 10 ISPs for phase signed up on the project for phase one, there may not be enough market share for 10 ISPs to offer their services to. So we want to make sure we have at least one ISP in place for phase one and continue to add ISPs through each additional phase. But that should go without saying, if there are ISPs that want to sign up, and if they're following what our agreement says, we will. They're invited. It's an open access network.
Just in line with that, so phase one is the industrial park plus residential areas and commercial areas, if I would say make up more of it than probably perhaps residential. Would it be, I think the right way to say it? So as an ISP, I might be interested in phase one, but I'm not interested in the rest of the city. Is that just not a good thought from my standpoint of why wouldn't they want to be in the rest of the city?
Sure, that might, from a business standpoint on ISPs offering service, I guess my gut reaction, I would want to offer that service throughout the city. But if there is a very niche ISP that's offering a very specific program or product that maybe is only used by industrial users, I don't know what that product would be. That could be correct. I mean, they wouldn't be offering services for residential, but I don't know, maybe if it's okay with you, council, I might lean on Kyle Moorhead, president with Hometown Fiber, to maybe better answer that question, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, thank you. There are ISPs out there that specialize in certain areas and that prefer certain types of customers. I think initially with phase one in particular, we're going to be looking for the first ISP to provide to all of them, both businesses and residential. But if we can't get that, we'll make sure that we have a mix to at least establish service to the area that we're covering so that everyone in that area can receive services. But there are niche ISP providers that will provide just to business, as Kyle mentioned. And there are others that prefer just residential, but geographically, I don't see any limit there. It'd be the type of customer that they would service.
So we would know that if you found an ISP that was only going to provide to commercial, we would know that before we did phase one, and
yes,
we could say we need 2 or 3 before we do this.
Yeah, once this agreement is in place that's before you, we're going to start actively signing ISPs. And so as they come aboard, you'll have more and more information about them and what they provide and who they provide to. And as we shape the network, we're trying to de-risk it for you as much as we can before you begin construction.
Councilmember Davis.
Do you have any ISPs that are interested yet?
Yes. I can't sign them until we,
right.
But yes, there's one absolutely ready to go. It's a local Minnesota business as well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. You had indicated, Mr. Fox, earlier that that one of the advantages to this is that it guaranteed that all residents of the community would be served, and that businesses, couldn't exclude certain parts. But as you were showing us the map, that's not currently a problem in Willmar, is it? Or is it?
On the served, underserved.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have thought of this earlier, but I could have. If you look on the Minnesota Broadband website, there is a GIS webpage that shows you the entire state of Minnesota and which specific parcels or census tracts, however it's broken out on their GIS, is considered to be served, underserved, or not served. There are parcels in Willmar that are, let me back up. So what is the definition of served and underserved? So currently, if you are you are considered a served community if you receive 25 down, 3 up. So 25 megabits per second down, 3 megabits upload speed up. In 2026, that will change to 100 by 20. When you look at the city of Willmar, most of our, almost all of our community that is being served by internet is receiving that 25 down, 3 up. It's hard to beat. It's hard to not make that. When you start to look at services that are 100 down, 20 up, that's still even more. But then we start to look at different parcels, not large blocks, but different parcels in our community that are not even hitting those benchmarks. And even continuing on, when we look west to the industrial park, when you think of where the rail park was just sold near the airport, other parcels that are currently undeveloped in the industrial park are considered owned by the city, are considered not served because that fiber infrastructure is not there. They are there, what that service is brought in when the company would want to build, but we're proposing, again, this is how this whole project started, is to make sure that internet is already there to help attract additional developers to the industrial park. So we do have parcels in the city of Willmar that are not served.
Thank you. Another question I had, and maybe this is more of a question for legal counsel, but when it comes to the specifics about those emergency repairs, and that over a certain dollar amount, it's going to require council approval, but that we should be ready to make retroactive approval. It sounds to me like we don't have any other choice but to approve it at that point. Is that, I mean, is that practically where we're at?
That's a fair question. David, do you want to take a stab at it
I mean,
first?
that is one of the provisions the dispute resolution provision would apply to if the emergency repairs that were done, maybe there's a disagreement as to whether they would have counted towards emergency repair. Were they affecting the right sort of customers, enough customers, whether the type of repair that needed to be, addressed immediately. I think there is built in an ability to sort of address that between the parties if there is a disagreement on that.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, and we're still looking for a motion. Councilmember Fagerly.
Okay, so the city of Willmar, our buildings are already connected with fiber.
Correct.
Hospital is, and Midwest campus.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so if we hire a ISP,
Mm-hmm.
are we gonna drop who we're with and go with them?
Not necessarily. We would not be required to.
Well, we're in it for the money, I thought.
Sure. That is actually in, I don't have that one highlighted.
I would think you'd want to eat your own dog food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're obligated to do it, but I think you must.
I think that's probably a better, yes. Technically, no, we are not obligated to drop our current provider, nor is anyone in the city of Willmar. There is provisions in here that would allow us to obviously move on to that network at the fair cost. We're not getting a subsidized internet. We're paying our fair share just like everyone else. But to technically answer your question, no, we are not obligated to drop our current service. But we absolutely could and move our current service over to this, or even have a redundant service brought in by any provider.
Other questions? Anyone willing to offer a motion? Councilmember Nelson.
I'll just ask one more question. I know you went over the termination and just our comfort in if something happens, how do we get what are we committing to tonight and how do we get out of this if we need to?
So we
or
are,
want to.
Thank you, Councilmember, for the question. So what we're asking the council to consider tonight is the fiber communications operations contract. This is the governing document for the governmental program between the city of Willmar and Hometown Fiber. Now, as we talked about, that's noted on page 3. that both parties understand that they are entering into this contract prior to the city's final determination regarding the feasibility of the construction of the city network. Now, there's some good faith on the city side, some good faith on Hometown Fiber side that we want to continue to press forward to make sure that we can have those detailed conversations as Kyle had mentioned, and talking with ISPs. We would like to start doing community engagement sessions and get those scheduled. I don't have details on those right now, but it's going to be between now and when we ask you come back to the city council to approve this project, to call for bonding, to call for bids, award bids. We want to make sure you've got all of that necessary information to feel comfortable making that determination. So there are outs built into this contract if at any point prior to the operational date or prior to taking that step, we can walk away from this agreement. And again, in worst case scenarios, or try and negotiate or find another path forward. But we're not asking the council to approve a project tonight. We are not asking you to call for bonding. We're not asking you to release bids, to award bids. We are simply making a major milestone, making the next step that we need to make this project feasible. And that's what this contract is at this point.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing a fiber use agreement between the City of Willmar and Hometown Fiber, LLC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Other conversation? Councilmember Nelson.
Just one more question. In the determination of the things that are going to happen between now and the next steps, is there any money that needs to be expended to reach that next decision point?
That's a great question. I know what Kyle's answer would be, but respective to the council, yes, there will likely be continued another ask for minimal ask for branding, marketing, promotional material. I don't want this to be like I want it to be a respectful, reasonable number. We've actually taken some time. We've met with the hometown team on what this next outreach engagement section looks like, and I think, have drastically reduced maybe our ask of hometown. It's not a bad thing, but we have evaluated what the broadband committee can do and what city staff can do, and maybe be more boots on the ground instead of hiring those services out. That will be hopefully that proposal will be looked at this week. We'll get a meeting scheduled with the broadband committee and get this back to you in the near future. But for other asks that may be ahead now, I wish I could. We could talk about the network operations center. We could talk about permitting, feasibility studies. I think we'll kind of wait and see how this fall goes, and essentially what all those additional items would be is making sure that we are more construction ready in the spring. But I can understand the pressures of what the council would be asked to make those advanced agreements or approve those in advance of actually approving the construction project as a whole. So in a long way to answer your question, council member, there may be, but those will be evaluated by staff with the broadband committee before those are brought back to the city council.
Just one more. You've alluded to that there is an ISP that's interested in. Will that need to remain private until we would commit to this, or would you be able to market that we have an ISP?
Yeah, why don't you come up and help me with this one?
Thank you. It's really up to the ISP, but obviously they're going to want to
coattails any efforts that you have. So the sooner we can sign them, the sooner that can be in place, and the more effective that will be. So people can start signing up and saying, "Hey, I want this service from these providers, from this provider." If we get more, we'll add more to the promotional material that the city will, like you say, boots on the ground, get the word out. But
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to city staff and the broadband committee. Y'all have put in a lot of time into this, and this is a big project. I think that, there's certainly is going to be some opposition to it, but, for instance, that communication that you referenced that went out today referring to this project as risky is a word that I don't think could be fairly used about it because of the efforts that you put into it to minimize that risk. The termination clause that's so friendly and accommodating to the city, and that phased build out. Starting with something small and seeing how that process goes, you've minimized the risk, and I think I just wanted to thank you for that, and all of you that have worked on that. Any other comments or questions from council? Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Childers,
Aye.
Baggerly,
No.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Osk.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 noes, or 1 no, sorry.
Motion passes.
Thank you, council.
Professional services agreement between the city of Willmar and Bolton and Mink. Don't walk away.
I forgot about this one. Okay. All right, Mayor, Council, this is a follow-up to what we had just talked about, same subject. As I vamp here, I am going to get my material up in front of me. So during the network architecture phase of this project, the city is also has incurred and will continue to incur costs towards the civil engineering side of this, the Bolton and Mink portion of it. So tonight is a modified agreement focusing on just phase one of this project for professional services to be conducted and completed by Bolton and Mink. I think I've got everything summarized, but I will stand for any questions.
Council, what are your wishes? Councilmember Nelson.
I'm not ready to make a motion, but I am curious about the amount. If we, can we just approve what we've incurred, or is there more that's going to happen right now, or is this something that we should have paid earlier or known about earlier?
Yep, all great questions, Councilmember. We could absolutely have that conversation with Bolton and Mink to limit the scope of this to what has been incurred to date. However, we'd be looking at additional action from the City Council to make up that difference. From that number that you see here, 403,000 is not to exceed. In the coming weeks, we'll be setting up meetings with Bolton and Mink staff to really look at the next steps, a calendar of events, if you will, to see what types of costs will be coming in the immediate future. I don't have an answer to you on what exactly new costs would be coming. We do have some costs incurred, as I had mentioned earlier. This is something that should have been in a council packet previously, but maybe I don't have a better reason other than the transition between myself and previous planning and development director Walker. While this was never in front of the council, but we are here tonight making sure that we can get all these agreements squared away. And again, this would be the professional services agreement between for phase one with the civil engineering side of it.
So we've taken a conservative approach to approving the first round of this. What do we have to do with this as it relates to signing of the use agreement?
As in, what additional costs can we expect?
Well, I mean, I have an appreciation that there's work that's been done that we maybe should have been aware of before, but
Mhm.
is there work that needs to be done right now, or if we pay what we do we?
Sure. That would be, don't have that answer, but that would be what that future meeting with Bolton and Mink staff would be, looking at that next step of calendar. What items are on the checklist to get done next, and what costs can we expect them to come next, I guess. I don't have a better answer for you, unfortunately, than that at this time.
Councilmember Shoulders.
So we could approve tonight to agree to pay what costs have been incurred, and then at a later time, say up to this amount to cover current or future costs? Or,
I mean, essentially, that's what the agreement is. It's a not to exceed number. It's billed out on an hourly basis from Bolton and Mink. As far as I am aware, we do not have any other than what we know, any additional costs owed to Bolton and Mink at this time. But again, that would be that meeting I need to have with Bolton and Mink to get that. But if we want to amend to pay what is outstanding at this point, that is an option for the council, but we would be coming back to the council for the additional phase. It would be the same agreement. It would just be a lesser dollar amount.
Page 1 and 2 with Bolton and Mink's agreement, the network design, and then the construction factors after that.
Okay, thank you, Administrator Valiant. So the scope of services, thank you, is laid out in the agreement. The network design, construction documents, permits, and bidding. So the network design we had talked about for phase 1 is largely completed already. The construction documents for phase 1 are, we'll say 90%, 95% completed already. The permitting and the bidding would be the additional tasks to be completed, in addition to finalizing any punch list items on task 1 and task 2.
So do you think you can meet with them and come back to us at our next meeting, or?
Absolutely.
Looking for a motion.
I will move to approve the professional services agreement with Bolton and Mink.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further conversation.
Just a question that's for the full amount, even though we don't know if we'll be doing it?
I was putting the motion out there, assuming there was probably going to be more discussion.
Okay.
We will provide a report back to the council by the next meeting on what is yet to come with this agreement, or what's within the professional services for phase 1. Maybe try and work with the council on exactly what you're looking for, but we can certainly provide additional information if.
So are we going to table this?
Yeah, I was just going to say, do we want to table this till next meeting then, or is this something that we need to do tonight?
Maybe I'm not clear on exactly what the council is looking for.
I feel like
make your decision.
What I'm hearing from the council table is, first, I feel like I'm hearing an interest in the previous amount that we owe Bolton and Mink.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that I'm hearing consensus on moving forward with a not to exceed into the future.
Okay.
And wanting you to return to us at a future date with more details on what those future expenses would be. Is that summarizing a consensus?
I think so.
Yeah, because we can't vote on something we don't know what the amount's going to be.
Absolutely.
In which case, I'm assuming that we might need a dollar figure.
I could amend that to approve what we currently owe. Make a motion to approve what we currently owe to Bolton and Mink for services that already done. Does that make?
Does that suffice, counsel? Legal counsel? I'm wondering if we can.
Is that what you need?
That's just fine. Yep. If we can get that taken care of, and we'll come back with a further evaluation, that would be just fine.
We'll come back with what the actual cost is, plus what the next phase is. Because the next phase here, by the looks of it, would be the permitting.
So are we at a
The
point where you
construction
prefer us
documents
to
are gonna be
table
done
this
by
all?
September.
I'd suggest that we table it till our next meeting.
Just
So should I withdraw the motion?
Where are we? We're in a mess of motions on the table at the moment. What's the proper procedure here?
Withdraw the motion, and if there's another motion made based on the main motion.
Yeah, I would withdraw my current motion.
I'll withdraw my second.
Thank you.
Then I would motion that we table this until,
Table, if you withdraw it.
There's no need for a table, correct?
You just move for a table?
No, if there's no need to move for a table if there's no motion. Is that correct?
We'd still need a motion.
We should motion to table it.
Okay,
so I will make a motion that we table.
here we go.
Second.
Second. And you have discussion on tabling? No. So roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
Baggerly, Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Oz,
Aye.
and Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, we have table.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Mayor Reese can have fun with that when he gets back then.
Yes.
Administrator Valiant.
Yes. So we've been working on the budget, as you've all been knowing, and so we would like to have a work session with the council the week of the 26th. Typically, it would have been on Monday, but we do have a conflict with the comprehensive plan meetings that are already scheduled. So we would like to either have a suggested date of Tuesday, the 27th, or Wednesday, the 28th. What do you wish?
You want to go down the line on that, or what do we?
Yeah, let's go down the line. That'd be fun.
Well, we have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Councilmember O'Brien, let's start at your side of the table. Which one works? Did
I
they
have to
both
open
work?
my phone to find out.
Okay. We'll wait for you.
I'll jump in.
Okay,
Either one works for me.
okay.
Either one for me.
Both work for me.
Either.
I'm good with either.
They both work for me.
I'm good with either.
It's a good thing.
I'm still looking.
Oh,
Okay, well,
We don't.
you're outvoted.
both work for him. Councilmember Nelson.
Just a request that we get access to the budget information before we walk in the door.
Well, we certainly will try.
Well, no, but if you're not ready, then let's not do it because it's hard.
Well, we have to do it that week because the following week is September 3rd meeting, which is when the preliminary budget is supposed to be reviewed.
Okay. It's just hard to walk into the meeting and be handed it and not have had access to look at it.
I understand.
Sounds like the 28th. Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, which date are we going with? Tuesday or Wednesday?
28th. Wednesday the 28th.
Okay.
At 6:30?
Sure.
Where?
To be determined.
Second.
Second. Who is the motion?
Oh, I thought you made the motion. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just asked if we needed one, but I'll make it. Sure. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Oz,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
Community pride announcement.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the water treatment facility, the supervision there that gave us Sarah Sitema, who is the environmental specialist. She gave us a nice tour to myself and my granddaughter, and it was really well done. She really, I was very impressed. I mean, she did a very nice job. So thank them for that.
Other announcements? You've yet to be impressed and feel a sense of pride for the many aspects of the city, both the city staff and the police department and the many pieces of the community that put together Rockin' Robins. You've got one last chance tomorrow night, so don't miss it.
I don't want to jump the gun on the announcement, but I'm guessing we're going to go back to the.
Does anybody know?
Couldn't tell you. Late this afternoon, there was no decision.
Yeah, okay.
So they'll wait till the morning, but yeah,
Yeah.
not holding my breath.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.